What's up, apes? Time for your GameStop update as promised. Every week, we're taking a look at it, even though this week is a little bit quiet. There's a couple things I want to highlight, and I do want to spend a little time talking about some of the latest news around store closures, analyst estimates, and stuff like that. I do think it kind of paints a little bit of a picture for where we're at with the stock. Now, first thing, price performance. You can see that we're actually leveling off here. And this is a very welcome surprise. None of these lines have been drawn recently. These are all things that have been existing on the chart for a little while. And I draw that point out just because you can see that this down move has been in a couple different stages. This hasn't been parabolic down. It's been down, big down day, but then consolidation, down, slight drift down, then gap up, consolidation sideways, then 3 down days, and now we are consolidating sideways. So what this tells me is that the market is still both, well, GameStop is susceptible to the broader market movements, but then it's also still catching bids, which in the grand scheme of things is really solid, I think. Now, it does need to make a choice from essentially this zone that's building out. It's good that it's trending sideways through this, especially as the market was showing some pretty heavy weakness during the same stage. If we take a look at another chart really quick, just to share that point more closely, I want to give you a specific comparison point because I think it is useful. So let's take a look at GameStop. Well, actually, let's take a look at small caps here. We'll take a look at IWM, and then we already have GameStop up, so that's great. And let's zoom these out a little bit more just to get a bit more data points in there to the can't do that with GameStop, I forgot, because it's gone completely parabolic within the last year. So we have to tighten this up. So let's take a look. I want you to specifically monitor the time frames from this part of the chart, right? So I'm kind of highlighting the 20th here and then the same period here. And I want you to take a look at the move in GameStop relative to small caps over this time frame, right? So GameStop has been showing some pretty significant relative strength, even if we go out to large cap stocks. And again, we use the same reference period of essentially from the 20th, which is right here on both. And if we look at the moves here, GameStop has gone from 27 and now it's sitting at 25. So definitely a pretty big decline on a percentage basis, but 2-point decline otherwise. So it's around 10%. But then we can see on the 20th here on a relative basis, S&P 500's gone from 612 down to 583. The main thing is obviously in a volatility adjusted move, 10% in GameStop is kind of a nothing. It's standard fare. GameStop moves a lot. And if you take a look at the average true range or average daily range comparison in the S&P 500, this is accelerated massively over this time frame, right? So if you take a look over the last 90-day period, the average true range is 1.16, then it goes to 1.33, and then it effectively almost doubles to 2.3. Whereas if we take a look at the difference between the 20-day on GameStop, which is 5%, and then on a 5-day, it's 4.7%. So even though on a relative basis, this is moving a lot relative to GameStop specifically, it's actually kind of a stabilizing factor, which is very interesting to see. That aside, I did go through the options chain as per usual, just to see if anything sticks out to us. And honestly, not much. There was a little bit of a spike today that I can see here with respect to net call premium, but it's still not like a tremendously massive amount or anything that I would say like, oh yeah, this is a game changer, something crazy is going on here. I will say that this is notably bullish though, compared to effectively the last 2 months. We haven't hit the same 1 mil level since towards the end of April. The net call premium has been pretty light. So the fact that it is skewing bullish today is actually noteworthy in and of itself from a net premium perspective. And then if we take a look at just overall trades and see if anything sticks out to us from the perspective of directional plays, we have to kill the spreads so that we're just looking at single legs. And we can see A lot of the build out is still out in 2026. These are people speculating on longer term ideas, which again is good to see because this is not GameStop being dominated by expectations of short term price distortions. This is expectation of GameStop as a company growing in value, which is exactly the kind of thing that I want to see as an investor. If we take a look at the options chain in the platform, you'll notice a couple things. The first thing is obviously we can see volatility is getting way elevated here in the 28 March expiration cycle. And right now, earnings is slated for the 25th after the close. We'll see if it actually sticks there. But right now, that's where the market is agreeing. It's seeing it there. If we take a look at the total breakdown of calls to puts, still maintaining pretty strong call skew, not a big shift there, but a ton. Take a look at this volume today. 72,000 calls against 17,000 puts, and take a look at how many were bought at the ask or above. That's a actually tremendous value. The fact that that's 44%, I typically would expect to see the 40% handle as the in between the market. So these are absolutely people speculating to the upside. A lot of the volume is in the 7 March expiration. So if we take a look, 28,000 of that is in 7 March. And then if we go out to that longer term expiration, the 16 Jan, it's only 1,500 options out that far. 21 March is about 10,000. So most of it is in the longer term expirations on a combination. Obviously, a lot of it is the short term front play as per usual, but those are lower overall values. If we take a look at overall build out, the green here tells me that these are net adds. The contracts are still building out to the upside, and a little bit same on the put side, but again, nothing too extreme here. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is this. So there's some recent news that relates to the store closures. We can see that I think we already talked about some of these in Ohio. I think this article is from like the 26th or something like that. Yeah, 27 Feb. And it just talks about closing more of the stores, which again, I think is, everybody knows this. We're trying to offload the stores that are not driving profitability, which is exactly what should happen. And you can see that here's an entire list of the stores so far. So this is continuing to expand, and you can see that it's not limited to a place like Ohio. It's kind of across the board. The other thing that was really interesting was this. So they're talking about selling their international operations. This came out a little while ago. We originally discussed this, but I think it's worth just mentioning it in total because this drives the broader picture that GameStop is reinventing itself. It's doing what it needs to do to survive as a company. The fact that it's looking for stuff like this, the footprint that it has in Canada and France, with Canada specifically representing 5% of sales. They're saying, okay, well, this isn't worth the investment. We should divest from this and try to reallocate that money to where we see strength, which again makes a lot of sense. Now, the last thing I want to mention quick here, I was looking through this. This is kind of interesting. This is from The Street, and it just shares analysts' estimates on GameStop EPS, and most of them are showing negative expectations for fiscal year 24-25. You can see what the ranges are for both of those periods. There are some that are starting to eyeball potential profitability is, again, as you can see, expanding towards 2025, but these are using mean estimates. So we'll see exactly how it lands because, again, they're sitting on a lot of cash, which does help, but revenues are still contracting. So we kind of need to see where revenues go. But one of the cool parts about this is on a value basis. You can see price to sales are actually starting to show a little bit of opportunity from like a value perspective. So that is the current state of GameStop as I see it from a trader's perspective. As always, if you guys Want to learn more about the depth and the lore, the dude to talk to is Richard Newton. He's the guy to go see for all that stuff. He knows way more about GameStop than I could ever even hope to approach. So he's the guy for that kind of context. But I aim to add a slightly different lens and talk about the actual trader's lens of stuff, as well as the options market. So as always, if you have any questions, let me know. Be an outlier. I'll see y'all later.